Good afternoon. Thank you so much. Thank you, Peter, and thanks for coming and joining me for the talk. First of all, I want to ask for an excuse because I have a very bad cold, and I will try my best to speak well, but there might be some difficulty in between. As Peter introduced that I've started photography in 2002, but I'm kind of an accidental photographer. I never thought that I will be a photographer or this will be my profession. Since my childhood, I was always interested in theater, modeling, and fashion. So I wanted to be photographed. But I was living in a very small city. I was born in a small city as a refugee. My parents fled Afghanistan because of the civil war and oppression against my people. So I belong to Hazara community of Afghanistan, who have long been persecuted and oppressed by the ruling class or governments through all the years and centuries. 63% of the total population of my people were massacred brutally by the then king, Abdurrahman. He built minarets with their skulls. He sold Hazara men and women into slavery in bazaars of Kabul, Ghazni, and Kandahar, just in return of like a kilo or 2 kilo of wheat. That was the price for a Hazara. Then after that, they snatched or occupied most of the lands belonged to Hazaras and distributed them among their own people. And then heavy taxes were imposed on the Hazaras on what little they had left. So my parents, they also fled to many people, many Hazaras, those who survived, they were trying to flee and they settled into neighboring countries, Iran and Pakistan mostly. So my parents, they fled to Pakistan and they settled there. They got married there and I was born in Pakistan and grew up. So Quetta, it was in the city called Quetta, which is neighboring to Afghanistan and Iran's border. I grew up there. This is a very small city, not very advanced technologically or from a development point of view. So to become a model or an actor and to get your photo shoot done was kind of like a fancy dream that was almost impossible. But when the September 11 attack on the Twin Towers in the US happened, many of the foreign journalists, they poured into Quetta and Peshawar, which were the two major cities connecting to Afghanistan. So they couldn't get into Afghanistan because of the Taliban. They were waiting to get in when it is safe. At that time, I was a teenage, only 17 or 18 years old, and I just started learning English. And a friend of mine told me that there are many journalists and they are in need of interpreters. Why don't you go and give a try so you might earn good money? I went there. I tried my best to get a job, but it was really difficult for me because I was very young and most of the journalists couldn't trust that I would be able to help them to show them around and to arrange meetings with important people, such as President Karzai was an unknown figure publicly at that time, and he was living in Quetta. So as the other ministers and a few other important people, those who became important in the interim government and after. But after that, I got a job and I went to Afghanistan for the first time with a journalist from the Sunday Telegraph, England. And that was my first job, and I earned some money and I bought my first camera. So after looking at the devastation of my country, there was nothing like standing in like a complete building or undamaged structure in Afghanistan at that time. So I decided like I should express my view, what I want to say about my country, the place where I belong, but I had never been to. And it was supposed to become good. And I decided to buy my first camera with the money that I earned from that job. And I bought my first camera and then started doing photography. So that was very accident, and I didn't have any guideline or mentorship. So starting with some wedding photography, and at that time it was film. Like we were using film, and like it was very expensive, so I had to be very careful shooting. And then I got some jobs as a wedding photographer, and then was shooting on the streets. In 2005, I decided to go to Afghanistan and move permanently because I thought that it is safe enough to now go and live there. I went to my birthplace, not birthplace, the place of my mother's birthplace, Bamiyan, which is the central Afghanistan. It is famous for its giant Buddha statues, which were once stood there, and the tallest one was the world's largest Buddha statue, and it was blown up by the Taliban in March 2001. So I went there and I started working for an NGO, which is now part of the UN, International Organization for Migration. And part-time I was shooting the daily life of my people in Afghanistan, and like to express and to see how the condition of people living in Afghanistan are. For 2 years I worked in Bamiyan, and then when I moved to Kabul, I organized my first exhibition. So there I started working on different stories and looking at the poverty and the miseries of people living in the country. I was so moved, and I was learning, and I wanted to work on longer term stories. So one of the stories that I picked up was the Dancing Boys of Afghanistan. This is an appalling tradition in Afghanistan that young boys are often abducted or bought from their poor parents by the warlords and powerful people, and they are put to work as sex slaves and dancers for those people. So the warlords and the powerful people, they take these boys in their private parties and make them dance. In some parts of Afghanistan, this culture, it is also kind of, it is like a symbol of status. Some people, they feel very proud if they have a good-looking boy with them. And the boys are often, like they are 8 years old up to like, they remain with these people until they get old. And ultimately, these boys, they become pimps, or they will do the same things. So the cycle runs. I applied for a grant to complete this project for the Soros Foundation Open Society Institute documentary grant in 2009, and which I received, and I started working on this project. Initially, I was thinking that it was like, I knew that it was very sensitive project that is to be done. I knew the risks. I had the idea like it can take my life, but I was determined to do it because nobody worked on this story before. It was widespread across Afghanistan, but nobody was really talking about it. I was thinking, why nobody is talking about it? Like, there is a big presence of foreign journalists, not only the locals, but nobody was talking about it. And I dared to do it, and but then I faced the difficulties. We had 6 months of time to complete our projects, to submit it. For around, like, I started my research long before the grant started, and then when I was in the 5th month of the project, I got a call from my mentor, Yuri Kozyrov. Some of you might know his name. He works for Times, part of Noor agency. And because I couldn't reach these people, like, they were very hard to be reached, and like the warlords and the boys, they were not ready to be photographed. And it was even I received some threats, and like the people who I was asking them, they were not interested to help me, or they were scared. I asked the human rights organizations, UN, and nobody was interested to help. But finally, I met this boy, Shukur. He was a freelance dancer. He was kidnapped when he was 12 and was to another province. And then he was kept in the custody of the warlord for 5 years, and he escaped from there and came back to Kabul. But he was not accepted by his family and the society. So he was compelled to start the same thing, which he was expert at now, as a freelancer. So he helped me, introduced to some of the boys, and took me to a party to photograph, which I completed. So at that time, I was happy when I completed that I could complete the project, but it is safe now. I have done, and nothing happened, nothing serious happened. But in 2012, when I was working for the US Embassy in Kabul, the bureau chief of Washington Post came to Kabul, and I was introduced as an expert on this subject because I researched a lot and I was in contact with these people. And he interviewed me and asked me to provide my pictures to be published on the Washington Post. I agreed, and it was published on the Washington Post. The day it was published, a few days later, everything changed dramatically. US Embassy sacked me because they said, like, I didn't ask them to do an interview for the Washington Post, which was not in our contract to do the same, because I was not their spokesperson. And they were thinking, like, people in the government will think that America is behind this project or supporting this. And soon after, I started receiving death threats by people who were offended. And I was being surveillanced, like I was being stalked by unknown people, and they even came to my home. My mother was very worried, and so we left Afghanistan. We decided to leave immediately, leaving everything behind, and we got a taxi in the middle of the night and traveled back to Pakistan. So in 2005, I left Pakistan. At that time, the situation in Quetta was better, good. There were some incidents happened at that time on the Hazaras. It was only 2 or 3 incidents, slightly better. But when in 2012 I went back to Pakistan, it was extremely dangerous place for the Hazaras. They were being targeted on daily basis. There were suicide attacks on them. Now they were ghettoized. So they were living in 2 small areas in Quetta city. And every way, the entry into that area, which is covered, surrounded by mountains, there are checkposts by military, army, and the paramilitary forces. Check your cards for going in. It is like a border. But still, people are being killed. I saw many people, the people I knew or I grew up with, many of them, they got killed, or some of them, they got injured. This guy, he was my schoolmate. He was in a soccer team of my school. He got injured in a religious procession, like the Shia Muslims they have in every year. There was a suicide attack on the procession, and he got injured, and he is disabled from the lower part for the lifetime, so he can't do anything. And when I went to Quetta and I started taking photos, and like, so this was what I could do to raise something. I wanted to create something, but my mother was very worried, like, because nobody was sure if going out in the morning, nobody was sure if they will come back alive, and everybody was at that time were trying to leave Pakistan, the Hazaras. So a lot of people, smugglers, were operating there. This guy, he's also, I have known him since my childhood, and his van was ambushed. The two parts that the Hazaras live, so they travel. It is merely 4 or 5 kilometers long, and on that route, their van was ambushed, and everybody got killed, and he was the only one got injured. But after I took this photo, after 2 or 3 months of that, like, he also died of his injuries. People, smugglers who were operating at that time, so there were many of them, some of them, they were operating en route to Europe and some for Australia. My mother also forced me, so I don't want to see you get killed in front of me here. So you have to leave here. I was the only and sole breadwinner for my family. So I also found a smuggler and paid him, and he arranged my trip to Thailand. So I went to Thailand, and they got a visa for me. So I went there, and then from there, like, they guided me and handed over me to other smugglers. So in Thailand, they arranged the trip to go to Malaysia. So the plan was to go to Malaysia and then Indonesia. So here you can see, this is the river, like, which divides Thailand and Malaysia. That is Malaysia, and here where I'm standing is Thailand. So this smuggler and that speedboat is coming to cross the border illegally into Malaysia. Then we were 4 people. I met the other guys once I get to the smaller town next to the Malaysian border in Thailand. So the trip was organized for 4 people, and when we went to the other side, there was two other smugglers were waiting for us, the Malaysian smugglers, and with the Toyota Corolla car. And they took the back seats off, and we were sitting on the metal, 4 of us. And from the beginning, they told us, like, that we should keep our heads between our knees, and we shouldn't look out. So for 5.5 hours, we went to Kuala Lumpur like that, and then we were in between. We had a rest. It was a break for them, like they were doing some kind of drugs. And we also, it was a small break, and then we started the journey again. And in Kuala Lumpur, we were handed over to another smuggler who took us in Chinatown in Kuala Lumpur from there and to a house, an unknown place we didn't know. And then we were locked up in that house for 3 days and nights. Initially, when we went there were only 3 or 4 people, and then people kept coming and they were joining us. So this is one of the rooms. So for that 3 days we were there, like, I was taking photos. And on the 3rd day, when the smuggler came and said that the trip is ready and we have to be ready and to go and deposit the rest of the money, so we should go. On the last day, people in this picture, our friends, like those who I met at that house, all gathered to pray for the safe journey, because the next part of the journey was a boat trip where we heard stories that many people drowned from Malaysia to Indonesia. So they were praying, and then we started the journey, and there were instructions by the smugglers that what should we do and where should we go. And he clearly instructed us that once we get to Indonesia, we have to pay $1,000 each to the smuggler we are meeting in Indonesia. So we were 16 people, we paid $16,000 to the smuggler. And he also instructed us that we had to go to a hotel in Jakarta, because they will not ask for documentations, like to hire or to rent a room. Once we arrived in Indonesia, we didn't know which place it was, but we were taken to a wooden house. And first, the smuggler, he collected the money that we were told to give, $16,000 American dollars, to the smuggler. And we were instructed to wait and rest for 2 hours, then we will be picked up. In 2 ways, we were picked up, and we traveled for 21 hours. It was 16 of us, 21 hours. We were not allowed to go out of the vans, and even they were turning off the aircon of the vehicles. It was extremely hot, and we were like, the whole body was numb, like sitting continuously for 21 hours. And we traveled to another city where they arranged our trips, the flights to Jakarta. The airport security, they were also involved, so we were clearly guided into the plane, and where we went, and everybody passed away there. So I took some last photos, and then we flew to Jakarta. And in Jakarta, as we were instructed, we went to the hotels, that same hotel that we were instructed by the smuggler in Malaysia. So they didn't ask for documentation. It seemed like once we hired the room, they were charging obviously a lot of money, and they were also scaring us, like if we go out, so we will be arrested by Indonesian police. Then we realized that this hotel was probably used as a brothel or something. We stayed there the night, and it was also, people were using this place because it was also closer to the UNHCR's office. So then what the people, like the asylum seekers, they were doing, so the next day they would go to the UN office early in the morning to get registered with the UN, so they get the asylum paper, and they will not be, they will be protected by the police. So they have that paper from the UN. We stayed the night there, and the next morning I took a taxi. I knew a guy who were in Indonesia before me, so a town outside of Jakarta called Bogor. I called him, and he was there, so I joined him. And there, many asylum seekers from Iraq, Myanmar, Iran, Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, Pakistan, they were all there. And I joined my friends, and there it was my plan, like while I'm traveling, I should document my journey as well. I was not sure if I will be allowed by the smugglers, but luckily, until this part, there was no problem. I was not stopped. And I started documenting the daily lives of asylum seekers in Bogor. I met my primary school teacher, the lady at far end. She was also there with her family in Bogor. Their claims were rejected once, and they were waiting to apply for another appeal. And I also met other people, those who were waiting for their boats to get ready and to travel to Australia. It was a very difficult time. Everybody was like in a very suspicious, their suspicious mode was turned on. Nobody was trusting another. Like they were thinking, some like doubting on each other, maybe like they are from immigration or from police or from the smugglers. Like everybody wanted to stay away from these things, so they shouldn't be labeled either like the spy for smugglers, or not spies for immigration, or worker for smugglers. Like if they are labeled and it's proved to be like you have cooperated with the smugglers, then you could face charges for that. And everybody wanted to, so it was really difficult to photograph people at that time. And nobody was thinking, like they were all very surprised, like wondering why I'm doing this, is I am also an asylum seeker. Like they were all worried about themselves, but I was taking photos. They were trying to arrange the trip, and I was taking photos. But I was also doing the same. Like I was in search of people smuggler, like who can arrange a trip so I can join. The room that the guys that who I joined in Bogor, it was 7 people. 7 people in 7 people. They were sharing a big bedroom with 2 queen-size bed. It was 7 of them, and I also joined them. We were 8 living in that small room. After a few days, 3 of my roommates they got a call from their smuggler that their trip is ready for Australia. And one of the guy, Jafar, he was a very nice guy. He asked me, like, if you want, I will also talk to the smuggler. He's from the same town as him, so he will speak to him if I want to join them. Then I don't know, for some reason I was doubtful. I said, like, no, I want to spend a few days here before I make a wise decision. They left for their perilous journey, and after a few days of that, we heard that a distressed boat sank en route to Christmas Island. Soon we found that it was the same boat that my roommates were on that. And then we got another news that the 2 other guys who were in our room, they drowned, they were missing, and only one guy, Jafar, who offered me, he survived. We were really sad and scared. It was a difficult time or situation to make a decision. Going back was not an option, and going forward was also very risky. Both ways, there are chances to get killed or to drown. But I decided finally that I'll go, I'll take that risk, because if I reach, then I will be able to help my family. If I go back, I'll get killed by militants, those who are targeting Hazaras. They're on the name of Islam, but and my family will be left alone, and they will be vulnerable in front of them. So I decided, and I found a smuggler, and we all agreed to go with this guy. And he promised us that the boat that he has arranged is very good, is a cargo boat, and then in a good condition. So we all trusted, and the deal I made with the smuggler that we are 5 or 6 people from one place. If you want us to go with you, then I will take my camera with me. That was the deal that I made with him. And he said, he was very suspicious on me. He was thinking that maybe I am operating for either Australian immigration or Indonesian immigration. So he was doubting that I may tip off these security agencies, so their trip can be unsuccessful. But I promised that I will not take any photos until we are in the water. That was agreed, and we headed with them, and we got a call in the afternoon and said, like, we have to immediately come to Jakarta and we are ready to go. I and my friend Majid, we went to the city, and with the other guys, they also followed us. And then we were taken in the night to an unknown place. We didn't know the area. And on small speedboats, we were taken towards the main vessel. I was on the last one, and after leaving there, like we soon lost the main vessel. So we kept searching for an hour and a half or something to find the main vessel. They were about to leave that when we found them, and we boarded that. The first night and day went very smooth. On the next day, like it was night, when it was daylight, bright, we found that we were 93 asylum seekers on that small fishing boat. It was not a cargo boat, small fishing boat, and everybody was instructed to go below the deck, because if we are seen, then we could get arrested. So 93 people in a very small and congested place downstairs was very difficult. Everybody was getting sick, and there was also diesel tanks in there, very smelly there. So we were there, and people who were closer to the entrance, they were taking turns to get out and get some fresh air. I kept taking photos, going around, and the first day and night went smoothly, and by the second night, the weather turned. Our boat was floating on the water like a matchbox. We were in the middle of the Indian Ocean. I saw on the GPS next to the captain. We were in the middle. So Java, Indonesia was on the other side and Christmas Island on. So we were right in the middle, and we were trying to go towards the Christmas Island, but the boat was like uncontrollable. The captain told a guy on the boat who knew Bahasa, told him that discuss with your friends. If you all want to go further, I will take you, but nobody will survive. Everybody will die. But if we turn back, there might be a small possibility of surviving. But going further, there is no way. Everybody will die. Because the further we went, the water got rougher, and then it was very bad. Everybody was very scared, and like I could hear like people were crying and praying and they were recalling their loved ones. It was a very terrible moment and a time, like still I think, when I recall that moment, it sounds like scenes from when you see those scary movies, like dramatic. It was in real, like we were in that really situation. We didn't have any hope that we will survive, but after traveling back for 7 hours and this steering at the end, like it was working only one way, the other way was not working, the thing. And we saw an island, and everybody got happy. So getting closer to the island, our boat crashed onto the rocks, and like it also leaked in between on the second night. Like water was coming in faster, and we were bailing water with pots. Like one of the water pump was not working. Our boat crashed onto the rocks, and we ended up into the jungle. And we spent 2 nights in the jungle without food and water. Then ultimately we were seen by a tourist group, and they informed the Indonesian police, and we were arrested and were taken to a detention center in Serang. I'm sorry. In detention center, we were furtively strip searched by the Indonesian immigration. So the money, the shoes, everything, and mobile, whatever they got, they took it from us. My camera, like I missed this bit, that once we jumped into the water, my camera went into the water, and like whatever I documented, it seemed like it is gone. I was really pissed off on that rather than my failed journey. Like I said, what have I done? This shouldn't have happened. But I was really worried about that, and I also asked one of the tourists, like he had a camera, like I said, can I check my card in your camera? When I inserted my card into his camera, it didn't show anything, and I was very hopeless that I lost everything. So at immigration's detention center, they took everything, and we were locked up into two big halls, and the smaller one, the room, I was with 7 other guys. So we were locked up. It was decided that we will run away. I really did not want to end up in a detention center with an uncertain time, that how long we will be there, and that was not the plan to be there. Like I never thought that I will be detained. I was born free, and I wanted to be free. So we waited until the night, and the next morning we kept looking at the guards, their movements. Once they set around the fire around 3 a.m. So we all woke up quickly and removed 2 glass slates from the window facing outside. So there was a small alleyway and the big wall with the shards of glass on the top. Our shoes were taken, so we were bare feet. So we removed 2 glass slates, and I was the first one to go out of the window and took the bed sheet and the pillow, wrapped the bed sheet around my forearms and put the pillow on the shards of glass. We climbed the tree and jumped onto the other side. And we made the group of two each of us, and then we escaped. We didn't have any money. And we got a taxi and told the taxi to take us to Jakarta. From there, as we didn't have money, my friend, the guy who came with me, he hid some American dollars, but the taxi guy was not accepting that. And I checked my pockets. I lost all my contacts because my mobile died in the water, but that was also taken by the immigration guys. So I checked. There were 2 business cards in my pocket, and one was from my friend who I attended a photography workshop in Thailand with, and the other was a journalist from the Global Mail from Sydney, and he met just before one day before the trip. He wanted to do an interview, but everybody was avoiding to speak to media because they were scared that they will be punished for speaking to media about this situation. Because Australian government, it was popular, like it was very among people, like they said, like they don't like, so you will be punished for that. So we traveled. I met this guy, and he one day before, and he wanted to do an interview with me, but I said I didn't tell him that I'm meeting the smuggler on the next street, like where I was meeting him. And we left the other day, but I had his mobile number on the car. First I tried my friend. Her mobile phone was off. She was Indonesian. And the second number was from this guy, and I called him, he didn't pick. Second time I tried, he woke up 5 a.m. in the morning, and he said, like, I introduced myself, that no, this is me, Batoor. Do you remember we met a few days ago? He said, yeah. What happened? I said, like, I was on the boat, and our boat journey failed, and we were about to die, and we were arrested. So I escaped from detention center. Can you please help us? Can you pay for our taxi if we come to Jakarta? And he said, he was not sure. Then he agreed, and he didn't give us his home address, but he said, like, I will come to this place. He was also scared. And he paid for our taxi. He took us to his home, and we had a little bit of rest, and then went for breakfast. And he did all this story, a piece on the Global Mail for that day, that what has happened. So unfortunately, Global Mail is not active anymore. You can't see, but there was this story that they broke. And that day I also checked to my friend's house that luckily my memory card survived, and the pictures that you can see now, so they are from the same camera which died in the sea. And then we went back to Bogor to our normal life, and I was in this between. From the beginning, I was in touch with my mentor, Tim Page, who was a veteran, a renowned photojournalist for his work from Vietnam and Cambodian War. So they strictly advised me not to take any other boat and not to risk my life. So, and they told about my story to SBS, and Mark Davis from SBS Deadline, he traveled to Indonesia and did a half-an-hour documentary about my journey, because this was the first time in Australian history that anyone has documented the boat journey of asylum seekers. You all must have heard about the journey, that how it is in writings, but it was the first time being visualized. So ultimately, this story was got popular, and many of my friends at the UN and the US Embassy and the journalists, they got to know, they came to know about my situation, and they started helping me. So my case was processed to UNHCR fast, and I was resettled in Australia in 2013. In 2013, when I came here, my story won 2 Walkley Awards, Photo of the Year, and the photo is said. Then I was invited to speak at TED, and then since then I had been speaking publicly. And I was also honored to be sponsored by Fuji, that I have been using their camera, Fuji X100S, which I really love. I love the square photos, which I shoot mostly with this little toy. It is very handy and small. I was also awarded by the University of Queensland for the award called Communication for Social Change Award. And then since then I'm active, and I have been advocating for refugees and what they are, from what circumstances they come, and what do they face, and how they are represented here. I also traveled back to Pakistan. Now I'm making a feature film about my journey and the reasons that why people flee their countries on first hand. What make them risk their lives? They know that it is 99% death. Once you are on board, you board that leaky boats, old fishing boats, it is 99% death. Like, they are overloaded most of the time by smugglers. I have completed that feature film, and that is now to be released soon. I will show you a promo of that.
والأرز وزعها للأنام فيها فاكهة والنخل ذات الأكمام.
My name is Barat Ali Batoor, and I was a refugee. I took the perilous journey on a boat with 92 other Hazaras to seek asylum. I have found a new life in Australia. Now I have returned to my birthplace, Quetta, one of the most dangerous places in Pakistan, to tell the story of my people.
1,000 kg explosive were used on Hazaras. Even C4 chemical were used. A mother, she had lost her 3 sons, young sons. She has psychological problem. She goes to that street. She knocks every door of the house. She could not find the part of her son's body even.
و د مکان زین چې مطلب کم سے کم 500 گز فاصله سری مردم گوشت مردم بازوای مردم پای مردم از بلیت چتا ملاو شده
اینجای سه وارد شدن دفعه اول که بود گاڑیای ازلگور زدک یک روز در نوروز مانده در 2009 و دومنه دفعه این زد در 2011 و سیومنه دفعه در 2012 بود که چند تاریخ فایرینگ شد. تقریبا نیم گنچه فایرینگ شد.
بابیشم پیش از رئیس شدوی خود اینا یک دفعه قصدی رفتن استرالیا را کردم
آن پاسپورت ویزا شد بعد اما مجلات این چی بود باره که اون واقع شد هرچی زنگتون بنده دیگه هم زباد از اون نفرها برن در بولان مراست در بولان خاطی میشه ایچی
فقط بس بسیار پور بود و استاده بدون که یک دفعه قلموغل شد کامران کرد و دید که سرمه که اصلا مغل شد ایشچه بلا فاصله فایرین شروع
The Hazara community is under siege. and live in constant fear. Many of my people are desperate to find a way out, but hope is fading. Their story is my story. So this is, thank you. This is the first trailer of the film, and yeah, it is about to be released. Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to get the new Fuji camera, the square ones, GFX, to play with that and to be determined and keep documenting social issues, not only about my people. Any social issues I'm determined to work on. I hope I'll get the strength. Thank you so much.